A trip to Guam with your husband is amazing. What would you like as a souvenir? The smug face of my sister, Amelia, who was on a cheating trip, seemed to flash before my eyes. Yet, without getting angry, I calmly said, "I'm currently busy with your daughter's funeral. Also, my husband is right beside me." "What?" Amelia, turning pale at my words and literally flying back home on a plane, was met with the sight of, "My name is Sophia. I'm a 29-year-old working mother. Though I've only recently started introducing myself as a housewife. In reality, I'm a newlywed, having just gotten married a few days ago. My husband, Eric, and I were colleagues at work, and our relationship blossomed from there, leading us to the altar. However, as workaholics, we deemed a wedding ceremony a waste of time and simply registered our marriage. We've talked about possibly having a photo shoot in wedding attire when we're less busy, but now, during the peak season, is not the time. The timing of our marriage registration, amidst our busy schedules, could only be described as such. It might seem like a busy season now, but we anticipated it getting even busier, making it inefficient not to marry now. A loveless, cool marriage? Not at all. We've decided never to mix work with personal life. At work, we're extremely dedicated professionals, but at home, we switch gears entirely and become a sweet, newlywed couple. Though we didn't have a ceremony, we did visit each other's parents to formally introduce ourselves. Both sets of parents accepted our decision not to have a ceremony with a modern "that's how it is these days." We simply sent greeting cards to our relatives. That's how smoothly and straightforwardly our marriage proceeded. With just one exception. The problem was my sister Amelia, 5 years my senior. Amelia is married and settled down now, but she was once known for being a big fan of men. Or should I say she was famous to me that way. What's even more troubling is that Amelia has a habit of stealing from people. Generally, the expectation between siblings is for the older to give way to the younger, but that kind of thinking is outdated, and our parents never pushed such notions on us. Not only did Amelia refuse sharing things with me, but she also came up with her own way of thinking. What's yours is also mine. In other words, she took my boyfriends. I got my first boyfriend in 8th grade. Given our young age, it was a sweet, innocent kind of romance. "Oh, what a cute kid." Yet Amelia took him from me, saying, my boyfriend, just 14 and I had barely turned the same age, was taken by Amelia, who was 19. Unbelievable, but true in Amelia's case. And once my ex-boyfriend got into Amelia, she'd dump him. Basically, Amelia was just enjoying a game of stealing from me. Heartbroken, I didn't have a boyfriend for a while, but fatefully, I got a boyfriend again in my junior year of high school. It was a busy time with exams, so he was more like emotional support than anything else. However, Amelia, who had started working, came home while we were studying together. "Oh, what a cute kid." Repeating that line, she took another boyfriend of mine. Why were they taken so easily? The two of us sisters didn't look alike. I resembled our ordinary-looking dad. Meanwhile, Amelia inherited not looks from our beautiful mom, but even more beautiful grandma's looks, through a striking case of skipping a generation. I hate to admit it, but Amelia is genuinely beautiful. And despite not exercising or dieting, she also has a great figure. For someone who struggled with dieting unsuccessfully, it's frustrating. And let's be honest, middle and high school students tend to choose based on looks. When faced with an older, beautiful sister, well, of course, they fell for her. After experiencing heartbreak because of Amelia twice, I chose a university far away. I lived on my own while working part-time and went straight into employment after graduation. I never returned to my hometown. Because, who knows what Amelia would do if I did. Now, Amelia is married and a mother of one. Even though I'd like to think she wouldn't make a move on my husband, now that I'm married, I still believe it's better to be cautious. People don't change that easily, I believe. When I went to my parents' house to say hello, Amelia wasn't there. I did send a marriage greeting card, but got no response to it. I have a bad feeling about this. As I muttered, Eric, who knew all the circumstances, said, "Well, it should be fine. We're apart and we hardly meet." He laughed carelessly. He's laughing now, but I wonder if Eric can keep smiling when he meets Amelia. After all, even her past boyfriends who said, "It's okay," couldn't stand it when Amelia made a move on them. But Eric is a grown man of 30. I don't think he would be tempted just because a pretty woman makes a move on him. I want to believe that. It's not that I don't trust Eric, but it's Amelia we're talking about. A person who would steal her sister's boyfriend with a laugh and then easily throws them away. "I can't believe you dated such a loser." And she laughs again. I trust Eric more than Amelia, who I can't trust at all. Then, one day, I got a call from Amelia. Reluctantly, thinking it unpleasant, I answered the phone, not wanting to be immature. "Long time no see. I'm surprised you managed to get married." This was the first thing the sister said to her sister after a long time. I regretted answering. "But your marriage is pretty late, huh? I got married at 27, you know." She's taking a dig at me for being just 2 years older than she was when she got married. My daughter Emily, who is now 5, is rumored to be a prodigy at preschool. She's beautiful like me. Good thing she doesn't take after her aunt. And she puts me down. Emily's aunt, that's me, right? After talking about her own happy environment, Amelia finally broached the subject. "What's your husband like?" At this question, I thought, here we go. So, I say, "He's just a regular guy." I keep it vague and harmless. "What about his income?" "Maybe about half of what your husband, James, makes." "And his looks?" "That's what I'm saying, he's average. A plain guy who matches me." Sorry, Eric. In my eyes, you're the coolest husband in the world, but I can't let Amelia know that. I apologize to Eric in my heart. Average all around, huh? That's why I'm telling you he's average. What does he do? He works at the same company as me. What? An affair with a superior that led to a marriage of convenience? As if! We both were single and just dated normally before getting married. What kind of fantasy is that? I'm outraged, but Amelia, on the other end of the phone, laughs nastily and says, "Well, that's so you. Wish you all the happiness. Hope your marriage lasts long." And then she hangs up. I was annoyed all day by her irritating way of speaking until the end. A few days later, an unbelievable thing happened. "Hey Sophia, wanna have lunch outside today?" My colleague, Camila, asked. I agreed and went out to the company lobby to leave, and then... Sophia! There you are! I was just about to have them page you at the reception. Perfect timing! Hearing my name, I turned around, frowned, and made a strange sound. Because Amelia was rushing over to me. Why is Amelia, who's supposed to live 2 hours away by train, here? What are you doing here, Amelia, in a place like this? What do you mean? I just happened to be traveling nearby. What, she's talking like she just stopped by while shopping. Is there even such a thing as just stopping by on a trip? And this place isn't even a tourist spot or anything. While making clearly suspicious excuses, Amelia looks around and says, "Ha, this is quite an impressive company." She's sizing it up. I have a bad feeling. Please, Eric, don't show up. Just as I was thinking that. Sophia! I hear his voice and my heart sinks. When I turn around, several of my coworkers are standing there. Including Eric, of course. Heading out for lunch now? Yeah, well. Oh, who's this? Nice to meet you. I'm Sophia's sister. Sophia always talks about how much you help her out. Saying so, Amelia shakes hands without waiting for my stop. Nice to meet you. Oh my God, how handsome! Amelia exclaims while shaking hands. Sophia, how is this guy average at all? What? He's more handsome than James. Please take care of me in the future too. Amelia starts to ooze charm. This is what you call locking on. If you ever have trouble with Sophia, don't hesitate to contact me. Saying so, Amelia hands over a note with her contact information. Why does she even have that prepared? By now. Leaving us dumbfounded, Amelia left. Your sister is quite something, huh? Camila said that to me, and all I could do was give a wry smile in return. Then, all of a sudden, I got another call from Amelia. I decided not to answer, but after incessant calls, I reluctantly called back. I'm going to Guam soon, and I've decided to leave Emily at our parents' house during that time. If anything happens, please take care of her. What? But it's quite a distance from my house to our parents. You know our parents are getting old and don't have much energy. It'll be fine, since there's a weekend in between. Whether it's fine or not should be decided by the receiving side, not the one making the request. A trip to Guam? Just you and James? I guess I get the idea of taking a break, but... While I was talking, I heard something from behind Amelia. Who are you talking to? I heard a male voice say. James has the day off today? It was a weekday, and I was on my work break when I returned Amelia's call. Amelia is a housewife, but James works a regular job. Wasn't he supposed to be at work on a weekday? Hold on, I'm talking to Sophia. Sophia. Hearing that voice, I asked. Wait a minute. What? Amelia, who are you with right now? Don't tell me. Just bumped into your husband here by coincidence. We're technically siblings, so no big deal. Huh? What are you talking? Anyway, take care. Ignoring my response, Amelia hung up the phone. Unbelievable! My shout echoed through the break room. Sometime later, I heard that Emily had been delivered to our parents' house. It seems Amelia told our parents she was going on a trip to Guam with a friend. Apparently, it was a trip aligned with James' long-term business trip, and that's why Emily was left at our parents' house. An affair trip, really unbelievable. At my muttered complaint, "What?" Mom tilted her head, but I just shook mine, indicating it was nothing. Despite being furious at Amelia, Emily was innocent, and being her day off, I had come to our parents' house today to take care of lovely Emily. Sophia, look! Isn't it cute? It really is, you did a great job drawing. Emily innocently showed me a drawing of her favorite hamster. When I praised her, stroking her head, she smiled happily. Indeed, Emily was very cute and would surely grow up to be beautiful. I resolved to protect her pure heart so she wouldn't turn out like Amelia. But the situation took a sudden turn. After a while, I heard Emily scream, and the house turned into chaos. Being on my day off and staying at my parents' house, I was busily moving around. While I was busy, I got a call from Amelia. Wondering what it was about during such a busy time, I thought maybe Amelia was worried about Emily in her own way and answered. Hey you. How are you? Only to hear her carefree voice, making me want to hang up immediately. I'm busy right now. What is it? Nah, just that Guam was so amazing. Ah, is that so? I'm going to hang up. Wait, hold on. Guess who's next to me right now? A friend, right? Yeah. So, what do you think your husband is doing right now? Eric? What happened to Eric? He's not there, right? You're home alone, right? Well, of course. Amelia's insinuating way of speaking was infuriating, but I took a deep breath and patiently dealt with her. What do you want? Hey, you're on the phone with someone again? Suddenly, another man's voice was heard over the phone. Amelia laughed and responded to him. Wait a sec, Eric. Oh, did you hear that voice just now? I thought to myself that it must be intentional, I replied. I didn't hear anything. It's just too bothersome to engage. Oh, really? That's too bad. Just kidding. I guess you probably did hear but pretended not to, right? Sorry, I'm the only one happy here. Look, I'm really busy right now. Can we talk later? Don't be like that, it'll be quick. So, about the trip to Guam with your husband, it's been fantastic. She dared to say it outright. But my heart did not rage. I was quite calm about that matter. Thinking I was silent and unsettled because she couldn't see my face, Amelia didn't wait for my reply and continued. So, I'm going to bring back a souvenir for you. Someone who came with us will bring it back, so let's eat it together. I was astounded by her brazenness, no longer trying to hide anything. Oh, by the way, what kind of souvenir would you like? Something sweet? Listen. Unable to bear it any longer, I said. Right now, we're in the middle of Emily's funeral. What? There was a delayed response to my words. Didn't you hear me? Emily's, your daughter Emily, we're in the middle of her funeral. What? Wait. What are you? Stop joking. I wouldn't joke about life or death matters. Besides, I took a breath and, looking up at the person standing beside me, said, My husband is right here beside me. What? Over the phone. Wait, what does that mean? Her voice sounded panicked, but ignoring it, I hung up the phone. Seeing me snort in disdain, the person who chuckled wryly was indeed my husband, Eric. Several hours later. Emily! A person burst into the house, shouting loudly. Undoubtedly, it was Amelia. Apparently, Amelia was, after all, a mother. She must have caught the first flight back. Amelia, with a changed complexion, barged into the living room where we were relaxing. What do you mean, Emily's funeral? Right after she entered, shouting. What? Amelia was surprised. Mommy? A young voice called out. Emily! Wait, I don't understand. What about the funeral? At Amelia's words, Emily teared up. She had just stopped crying. Remembering it probably made her sad again. Mommy, Hammy. Saying so, Emily pointed at the empty hamster cage and then handed Amelia a small box. It was an urn containing Hammy's ashes. What? Wait, huh? What's going on? Looking for an explanation, Amelia turned to me, so I explained. Emily's pet hamster, Hammy, died suddenly yesterday. It seems he was quite old, so it couldn't be helped. You said something about Emily's funeral earlier. Ah, that. I meant to say the funeral for Emily's pet hamster. Didn't that come across? How could that have possibly come across? Amelia's scream echoed throughout the house. Ignoring that, I turned my attention to the man who had come with Amelia. And who might this be? To that, Amelia, who had collapsed to the floor as if her legs had given out, yelled, "What are you talking about? Your husband, right?" Why am I the one getting yelled at? Like I said earlier, my husband is right here beside me. Stop joking around already. Angry, Amelia finally looked at the man sitting next to me. Who's that? The man with the utterly average face? Rude. This is my husband, Eric. Huh? Amelia was surprised, and Eric smiled bitterly. Hello, Sophia's husband here. He bowed his head. Then, who's this Eric here? That's another person with the same pronunciation but different spelling of the name Eric. What? Yes, the person standing next to Amelia. It just so happens that his name is Eric. And both I and my Eric know this person well. But you said at the company this person was Eric. I never said that. This Eric is a friend from high school who coincidentally ended up at the same company. We became friends because my husband Eric and him have the same sounding name. My friend Eric introduced me to my now husband Eric, and that's how we started dating and eventually got married. I don't get it. What the hell? What's confusing is on your end. First, you show up at the company out of nowhere, then you ignore my husband Eric and give your phone number to my friend Eric. And Eric, being Eric, goes and says, "Nice to meet you." Honestly, he's always been a ladies' man. Everyone was just astounded, you know. Amelia was speechless at my words. Yes, on that day when Amelia stormed into the office. The man Camila and I ran into as we were about to go out for lunch was none other than my friend Eric, along with my husband Eric and a few other male colleagues. It seems Amelia only had eyes for handsome men, getting fixated on my friend Eric, while my husband Eric, who blends into the crowd with his average looks, didn't catch her eye. But he was calling you by your name without any honorifics. Well, yeah, we've been friends since high school. I call him Rick as a nickname. Rick? To avoid confusion with my husband Eric. I prefer to call my husband by his real name. Smiling sweetly, Amelia then glared at my friend Eric. Why didn't you correct me? I asked you why you married someone as plain as Sophia. Well, I didn't deny it, but I didn't affirm it either. I just said that you were more attractive than Sophia. Maybe it was time to stop being friends over this. Amelia's face was a mix of red and blue, visibly upset. Rick, you're also to blame. Why go after a married woman? Eric spoke with a hint of anger. However, Eric just shrugged, looking troubled. Well, she said she was divorced, asked me to officially date her. Though, I thought of it as just a fling. What did you say? Amelia's face turned red again at Eric's words. What do you mean? Our relationship was just for fun. A male voice then chimed in. So, you were serious? Of course I was. I even went as far as getting a divorce. Wait, what? Realizing the voice didn't come from my husband or friend, Amelia slowly turned her gaze towards the door leading into the living room. Her eyes widening. Ah, James! Why are you here? Weren't you on a business trip? The other party had to cancel, so it ended early. Got home to find no one there, was quite the shock. I was about to call you when Sophia called me, said she was here. So what's this? Amelia, when did we get divorced? The divorce was just a joke. Amelia stood there, dumbfounded. Meanwhile, still slumped on the floor, Amelia looked up as the voice of my friend Eric echoed above her. Hey, what's this about not being divorced? So, everything with me was just a game to you? And you have the nerve to blame me? Don't mess with me. What did you say? I have no use for a woman who lies about something as serious as a divorce. Eric said that, then deeply bowed to James. I'm truly sorry for what happened, even though I didn't know. I understand money can't fix this, but as compensation, I will pay. Saying this, Eric handed over his business card as his contact information and left. Wait, Eric! I was serious about you. Yeah, right. As Amelia tried to follow, James's cold voice stopped her. Turning around, she faced James, who looked at her with cold eyes. James, wait, that was just a little joke. I'm tired of your lies. What? All those lies about taking care of our child while I was on business trips, going out with friends, and even being divorced from me. Well, it's sad to see you become a liar. What? As Amelia looked at James, bewildered, he nodded as if agreeing with himself. So, let's get a divorce. That way, what you said won't be a lie anymore. What? Well, it's not we got divorced, but we will get divorced, so it's a bit different, but that's within an acceptable range. Wait, just a minute. I won't wait. I'll also claim compensation during the divorce proceedings, and I'll take custody of Emily and raise her. You'll be paying child support. Wait. No waiting. From now on, we communicate through lawyers. Emily, let's go home. Saying this, James reached out his hand to Emily. Emily looked confused. Are we going home? Yes. James nodded. Wait a minute. You're going to take her mother away from Emily. Amelia screamed, thinking she could somehow turn the situation around by using her child as leverage. James paused for a moment, considering. Then looked at Emily after a brief silence. Emily, would you be lonely without Mom? No, I wouldn't be lonely. Immediately responded. What? Emily, you're okay without Mom. Emily looked at the flustered Amelia. Mommy is always gone on the days Daddy isn't home. She always says she's going out to play and tells me to watch TV, and she comes back late at night. Dinner is always just a cold bento. And I have to take a shower by myself even though it's scary. Amelia, you. I guess this was all new to him. James glares at Amelia with an angry expression on his face. What? It's your fault for dumping childcare on me. Amelia, you said you'd quit your job to focus on childcare and show me you could raise our child well. Besides, I took care of Emily on weekends, thinking you needed rest. Have you been deceiving me all this time? That's enough. I'll have a thorough discussion with your affair partner later. We'll discuss the next steps with a lawyer. Wait, James. No. Emily, let's go. Okay. Bye-bye, Mommy. As Amelia reached out her hand trying to cling on, Emily easily said goodbye, and Amelia's hand fell. The door closed firmly behind them, leaving Amelia slumped in despair. After negotiations, Amelia and her husband got divorced. It turned out Amelia had affairs with others besides Eric, leading to a divorce entirely at Amelia's fault. Her trip to my company, claimed to be a vacation, was actually an affair trip. Eric paid James compensation as agreed in the divorce court and left the company, stating it was his way of taking responsibility. Though I thought it was unnecessary, he insisted on setting things right. I hoped this incident would lead Eric, who had always been handsome and popular, to seek a more sincere approach to love. As for Amelia, Don't come back until you can pay off your debts, Dad said, effectively banishing her from the family home. As a housewife, Amelia couldn't possibly afford the compensation and child support ordered in the divorce settlement, so her parents had to cover it. They probably don't expect to get their money back, but made the sacrifice to ensure they could still see their granddaughter, Emily. Divorced and with nowhere to live or return to, Amelia reached out to me. I knew something was off. You marrying such a handsome guy. All right, I've had enough. Don't ever contact me again. With that, I hung up the phone. In a panic and nearly hysterical. I'm sorry. It was my fault. I won't go after your men anymore. She called several times, but I cut the calls off without saying a word and blocked her number. What happened to Amelia after being abandoned by both her parents and me is unknown. A neighbor who knows Amelia informed me saying, I thought I saw someone like Amelia, but she was so gaunt it hardly looked like her. Not a trace of her beauty left. Whether that was truly Amelia or not, I can't be sure, but I doubt I'll ever see her again. I'm exhausted. You've had a tough time. Eric handed me a warm glass of milk with a wry smile as I slumped down. Thank you. Saying that, I looked intently at Eric. What's up? You're making me blush. No, just thinking, what a great guy you are. What? Only you would say something like that. Well, I think it's best that way. The only one who needs to understand your charm is me. We both laughed, and Eric wrapped me in a warm embrace. Can't even cook a meal. Freeze out in the yard. With that, Ben closed the window and locked it from the inside. I immediately rushed to the window. Please, open it, I pleaded, pounding on the window, but Ben just smirked and closed the curtains. I rubbed my body, freezing in the cold. I could feel the warmth that had been provided by the heater being stripped away from me. What should I do? If this continues, even the baby in my stomach. Just as I was about to lose consciousness due to the overwhelming cold and the shock of being locked out. Are you okay? A savior extended his hand to me. The next day, I returned home with him. In the yard, Ben was freezing naked. Surprised at the sight, Nick stepped forward. You said it, didn't you? If you can't even cook properly, then freeze outside, Nick said to Ben, with a cold voice and gaze. Ben, who had been freezing in the yard, couldn't even respond properly. I'll call an ambulance out of the last shred of mercy. And, want to say anything to him before they arrive? Nodding to his words, I took a step closer to Ben. My name is Anne. I'm a 28-year-old housewife. My mother passed away from an illness shortly after I started working. And then my father followed her, dying suddenly from a heart attack. As an only child, I was left alone, and I tried to fill the void by throwing myself into work. And, are you okay? You seem to be pushing yourself too hard. Ben, my husband, was the one who spoke to me. Ben was someone who would comfort my grieving heart. A person who would support me when I cried alone. After I had calmed down, he approached me, and we started dating. After a few years of dating, we got married. I'm so happy for you, marrying such a lovely woman. Ben has brought home a wonderful woman. After getting married, I started living with my in-laws. I had a good relationship with my in-laws. And I saw on TV the other day that a new cafe opened near the station. Let's go there together sometime. Yes, I'd love to. Especially with Jane, I hit it off well, going out to eat together once a week. I also got along well with Mike, who loves cooking, and we sometimes cook together in the kitchen. I'm happy you get along with my family. Though, Nick can be a bit troublesome, right? Not at all. I didn't talk much with Nick, my brother-in-law, because he works from home and often stays in his room. However, I was interested in his work, and when I asked about it, he kindly explained it to me. In this way, I got along well with my in-laws. A few years after getting married, I became pregnant with Ben's child. Due to severe morning sickness, I decided to quit my job. That's probably for the best. Don't push yourself. This wasn't a decision I made alone, but after thoroughly discussing it with my in-laws. With the earnings of Ben and Nick alone, we could live comfortably, and I had savings of my own. Mike was working, and Jane had a part-time job, so there were no issues with me quitting. Pregnant women are lucky. They don't have to work and no one complains. Recently, Ben started to complain about it. He was present at the discussion, and at the time, he was the first to suggest I should quit. Acting all high and mighty with no job. Who's acting high and mighty? When have I ever ordered you around? In fact, I'm the one picking up the clothes you've strewn about and putting them in the washer. But being naturally competitive, I always argued back and managed to outtalk Ben every time. If you had complaints, you should have brought them up during our discussion. Right. It was Ben who brought it up first. Exactly. Instead of complaining, take care of your own stuff. With the support of my in-laws, Ben found himself isolated without any help. Nick and Ben weren't on good terms, and Nick wouldn't side with Ben. Ben looks down on me because I work from home. He doesn't listen to what I have to say and doesn't consider me an ally. Nick would mutter such things. So he wouldn't even join in on these conversations. Ben seemed displeased with the situation, becoming even more complainative when we were alone. Don't get cocky just because my family likes you. I'm not getting cocky, everyone just has common sense. Even when it was just the two of us, I never lost to Ben. However, as morning sickness began to set in, I found myself losing the energy to argue back. Being pregnant isn't an illness. If you're not working, you're no different from a NEET. I agree that pregnancy isn't an illness, but and is risking her life to nurture a life. That alone is work enough. Nick came to my rescue. He would quickly come to my aid whenever Ben complained and report to my in-laws. While Ben was being scolded by my in-laws, he took care of me. It's hard to tell who the dad is here, I muttered, stroking my belly. Well, with my in-laws keeping watch, maybe Ben will change eventually. Until then, I had believed in Ben. Oh, Ben's not back yet? Seems like it. Just then, Ben started coming home late. He claimed it was overtime, but I couldn't be sure. Even on his days off. I have to work on the weekend. It's busy, so I'll stay over at the company, he would say, and sometimes he wouldn't come home. Honestly, I suspected Ben of cheating. My in-laws thought the same and we divided tasks to gather evidence, but it was hard to come by. He only went in and out of the company, and there didn't seem to be any specific woman involved. It's hard to know what's going on inside the company. I asked his colleagues, but they said there wasn't anything unusual. And don't push yourself. Around that time, my morning sickness worsened, and I couldn't do any household chores. But it wasn't a problem since Mike did the cooking and Jane took care of the other chores, with Nick also helping out. Aren't you ashamed? What? Lying around doing nothing as a housewife. What's the point of you being in this house? Ben would wake me up in the middle of the night to say such things, seeing his parents doing the chores. And when I frowned, a guy who does nothing as a husband has no right to say that. Nick argued back. You always go against me, the eldest son. That's because you're not a brother I can respect. You've always been insolent. This led to a brotherly fight, which was about to turn into a brawl before the in-laws, alerted by the noise, stopped them. They listened to the story and scolded Ben. That's enough. Do whatever you want. Wait, Ben! Where are you going? Ben left without answering me. I'm really sorry about Ben. We are truly sorry. My in-laws apologized on Ben's behalf, and that was the end of the discussion. But Ben's attitude was getting worse. Something had to be done soon. I was at loss. What should I do? Is something the matter? One Saturday, my in-laws were going on a trip to a local event. It was planned in advance, but they seemed concerned about Ben's recent attitude. We're worried about leaving you behind. It's okay. The morning sickness has gotten much better. I sent off my worried in-laws with a smile, and they left for a 2-night, 3-day trip. At the same time, Nick also had an overnight engagement. I'm sorry to leave you at a difficult time. Don't worry about it. Take care. Soon after the in-laws left, Nick also departed. Today, unusually, Ben was at home and still asleep. Well then, I should do what I can, I muttered, standing up. Honestly, I still wasn't feeling well. But if I just lay down and did nothing, I wouldn't know what Ben will say, and fortunately, the fridge was filled with meals that Mike had prepared in advance. I began cleaning and doing laundry at a slow, manageable pace. Hey, make me a meal. Did you just wake up? Ben finally woke up around noon. His hair was a mess, and he demanded a meal with a sullen face. While I was taken aback, I took out one of Mike's prepared meals from the fridge. What's that? You mean Mike's prepared meal? You're a housewife and can't even cook? Hearing that made me instantly angry. Why should I be spoken to like that? Whose child do they think I'm carrying? I don't deserve to be treated like this. I'm sorry, but right now, my job is to protect the child in my stomach. Looking after adults is secondary. How dare you speak to your husband like that? Just as Ben yelled at me, the door opened. Standing there was Nick. I could hear the yelling from outside. You shut in! Ben glared at Nick, muttered an insult, and went back to his room. It seemed like he made some noise before apparently leaving. Nick sighed at that. Are you okay? Yes, but what brings you here? I came back for something I forgot, Nick said, looking worried. Seeing his expression reminded me of Jane, and I couldn't help but give a wry smile. It's okay, really. Go on, off you go. I'll be back. Nick looked at me with concern, hesitated, then left. Where did the Ben I first met disappear to? If things continue this way, divorce. But I still want to be family with my in-laws. Feeling tired, I decided to lie down for a bit. Closing my eyes, I soon fell into a deep sleep. And it's time to wake up. I woke up hastily, meeting the eyes of a smirking Ben. I had fallen asleep completely, expecting to be scolded by an exasperated Ben. I'd let you sleep, but it's evening already. Contrary to my expectations, Ben spoke to me kindly. Surprised, I stared at him. I've prepared dinner, so come eat once you're fully awake. Saying that, Ben left. A blanket was covering my body, had Ben. With that question in mind, I headed to the kitchen. There, Mike's prepared meals were warmed up, ready to eat. I'm sorry, Anne. Ben. I was happy to hear we were having a child, but I became incredibly anxious and took it out on Anne. This is my apology, Ben said, offering me a cake. Honestly, this gesture alone couldn't make up for his previous behavior. But I was genuinely happy he apologized. For the moment, I decided to forgive him, and we enjoyed the meal together. Look, it's starting to snow. Oh, really? Let's go have a look, Ben suggested, heading towards the balcony. Amused by his childlike behavior, I followed him. Indeed, in the dark of the night, the sight of white snow falling was beautiful. Coming from a region where it rarely snows, this was a fresh experience for me, and I carelessly moved closer. Here, let's open the window a bit. No, it's cold. You'll be fine if you wear a jacket, Ben said, putting a jacket on me and opening the window. The cold air rushed in, and as I shivered, he pulled me by the arm. Huh? Before I knew it, I was outside. Turning around, I saw Ben smirking maliciously. A housewife who doesn't do housework is a failure as a wife. Reflect on that overnight. Huh? What are you talking about? Can't even cook a meal. Freeze out in the yard. With that, Ben closed the window and locked it from the inside. I immediately rushed to the window. Please, open it. I pounded on the window, but Ben just smirked and closed the curtains. I rubbed my body, freezing from the cold. I could feel the warmth that had been provided by the heater being stripped away from me. What should I do? If this continues, even the baby in my stomach. Just as I was about to lose consciousness due to the overwhelming cold and the shock of being locked out. Are you okay? A savior extended his hand to me. He then helped me into his car. Why are you outside on a night like this? The one who helped me was Nick. Nick had cut his stay short, concerned about Ben. Feeling the car's heater warm me up, I exhaled. Just to be safe, let's go to the hospital, Nick suggested, taking me to the hospital. Thanks to Nick's quick action, fortunately, both the baby and I were fine. And while I was being examined, Nick apparently arranged for a hotel stay. We were able to stay at the hotel, but Nick left for somewhere else. I'm really glad. You're going to be a strong child. I caressed my belly with relief for having arrived at the hotel safely. I was truly glad nothing had happened. Exhausted from everything that had happened, I lay down on the bed and fell asleep. And are you okay now? Yes, thank you so much. No problem. Shall we go then? The next day, I returned home with him. In the yard, Ben was freezing naked. Surprised at the sight, Nick stepped forward. You said it, didn't you? If you can't even make a meal, freeze outside, Nick said to Ben with a cold voice and gaze. Ben, freezing in the yard, couldn't properly respond. I'll call an ambulance out of the last shred of mercy. And want to say anything to him before they arrive? Nodding to his words, I took a step closer to Ben. You almost caused our unborn child serious harm. I will never forgive you. Be prepared. Then Ben was taken to the hospital, and I asked Nick what had happened the night before. After dropping me off at the hotel, Nick returned home alone. He found Ben and a woman, who appeared to be his mistress, naked in the living room. It seems he invited his mistress over, thinking we wouldn't be home. With an out of the way, he felt completely at ease. Enraged, Nick apparently threw Ben out naked. See who the real trash is after spending the night outside, he said. Then, after intimidating the frozen mistress into giving up evidence, Nick forcibly sent her back to her own home. Apparently, the mistress had a family too, and by the time everything was reported, dawn was breaking. Nick took a nap in the car and then came to pick me up. My parents have been informed. They'll be coming home today, Nick said with a kind smile, staying close to me until my in-laws returned. It's okay now. Nick, thank you so much. No, I just did what anyone would. Thanks to him, I felt safe staying at home. Anne, I'm so sorry. We're truly sorry for what Ben has done. Upon their return, my in-laws immediately scolded Ben. It was decided that Ben would pay me compensation and child support before being kicked out. I'm sorry. It was a moment of folly. I truly love only Anne. Ben pleaded with me, but I ignored him. Just me? Enough with your foolishness. Don't look at me with those eyes. Then Ben flew into a rage and hit me. Enough! You idiot! Nick caught his hand. With Mike joining in, Ben was overwhelmed. Anne, I just gave in to temptation. Anne. I, embraced by Jane, watched him being driven away. He remained pitiful to the end. That's all I thought about Ben. Nick is really strong. Considering what had just happened and how he had managed to throw a grown man outside, I was amazed by Nick's strength. Yeah, Nick used to do judo. He wouldn't normally use his skills on anyone, though. Nick returned, laughing refreshingly at his own modesty, which unexpectedly made my heart skip a beat, and Jane laughed at my reaction. He's got a handsome face and strong arms. It's a mystery why he doesn't have a girlfriend. Quiet! Nick looked away, slightly embarrassed, which I found rather endearing. Given my situation of having no family or anyone else to rely on, I continued to stay with my in-laws. If you'd allow me, I'd love to hold the baby. Of course! Now, the four of us eagerly await the birth of our precious child. I learned from Nick that the mistress was a co-worker of Ben's. No wonder they wouldn't answer honestly when asked. They had been behaving like a couple at work. And the co-worker's husband thoroughly investigated after being informed. With that evidence, we both received adequate compensation and divorced. Both were fired for their actions during work hours and for claiming date expenses as work-related. The reason I know this is because I beg you, please forgive me. Ben came back to the in-laws' house. He pleaded for help, but how dare you show your face here? Don't burden it anymore. Never show us your face again. My in-laws drove him away with unanimous disapproval. Through it all, Nick was the most dependable, and I found myself drawn to him. Thank you for all your help. No problem. Wanting to help someone you like is natural, right? Huh? Nick's face turned red, and so did mine, influenced by his reaction. Then, I realized that Nick had liked me for a long time. Everyone seems to react negatively when I talk about my job, but you always listened earnestly. Seeing you interested in what I had to say, but you were Ben's wife, so I thought I should keep these feelings hidden. He said this looking down, causing me to look down as well. I had no idea he felt that way about me. Honestly, I'm not ready to be in that kind of relationship with anyone right now. I understand. But if you can wait a bit longer, I'd like to respond to those feelings. He looked up at my words. Then he smiled at me. Yes. I'll do my best to appeal to you from now on. I'll be ready. Our interaction was fully observed by my in-laws, making dinner that night an extravagant affair. Finally, Nick has a girlfriend. Stop it. Jane's excitement was evident, while Nick blushed and protested. Mike and I exchanged glances and laughed. Later, I gave birth to a beautiful daughter on the due date. She's so cute. Congratulations. She really looks like Anne, so cute. She's going to be a beauty. No man will leave her alone. I don't want to let her marry, Nick said, prompting the in-laws to chime in that he was getting ahead of himself. I couldn't help but laugh at Nick, who was already feeling like a father. Nick continued to be considerate towards me, actively participating in childcare. The in-laws were the same, ensuring someone was always there for me, allowing me to raise my daughter with peace of mind. And 100 days after breaking ties with Ben, I want to be her father. Please marry me. You're rushing it. First, we should date, right? Either is fine by me. Nick smiled happily at my words. This scene was again witnessed by Jane, who teased me about it afterward. Meanwhile, Ben, having been fired and forced to repay the embezzlement and compensation for me and our daughter, took on debt from dangerous sources and is now missing. Wherever he is, I hope he's managing. The in-laws are all doting on the grandchild, showing no concern for Ben. Nick seems to have forgotten Ben's existence altogether. Years later, I remarried Nick. Our daughter calls him Dad, and Nick has become a doting parent. We're having a boy next. That's great. Whether he looks like me or like and a boy resembling and would be nice too. I'm pregnant with our second child. Our daughter is excited to become a big sister. We're all thinking about what to name him. Likely going with our daughter's suggestion. And our daughter and the new baby, I'll make you all happy. You're included in that too. We plan to live happily together. As a family of 6, we'll live closely and joyfully. That's a promise Nick and I have made. Looking forward to going out as a complete family once the baby arrives. Looks like your company is going under. The words were spat out with a look of sheer schadenfreude. Our company has always been looked down upon by her. Being in charge of dealing with her, I've been on the receiving end of this kind of abuse for a while. What are you talking about? This is a huge loss, and it's troubling. Even if it's tough, you're just a secondary contractor after all. Why not look for a new job if your company's sales go down? After placing a $300,000 order and canceling it at the last minute, and then saying something like this, she is really out of line. Her attitude and the way she treats our company are something I can't deal with on my own. But then, a chance encounter showed me a way to avoid the $300,000 loss. Are you kidding, huh? It's your company that's going to go under, I suppose. What? Thus, Carol Smith was about to face some serious trouble. I'm Emily White. I'm turning 48 this year. I was married once when I was younger. But I got divorced 5 years ago, and now I'm single. I had a child in elementary school, but when my husband and I split, he took our child, and I moved out. I used to be a housewife when I was married. My husband was domineering, and I spent my days walking on eggshells around him. After the divorce, I hated the thought of marriage and couldn't imagine remarrying. I decided to live on my own. But as a single woman with a past as a housewife, I had no reliable source of income. That's when I stumbled upon a job ad for a web development company and managed to get a position as a secondary contractor. It was tough at first since I had no knowledge in the field. I was over 40 at the time and worked hard not to be outdone by age. Thankfully, I managed to keep up with the younger employees. Then, I was recognized by the sales manager and transferred to the sales department. Dealing with clients was challenging, but I found that I was good at sales and enjoyed it. However, we were trading with Dynamic Creations Inc. as our client, but its president's daughter named Carol Smith was incompetent, rude, and looked down on secondary contractors. I was troubled by her attitude many times. I've been feeling a bit off lately. Being at the age for menopause, my OB/GYN advised me not to stress too much. But the stress seemed to only increase no matter how much I tried to alleviate it. As soon as I arrived at work, there was a call from Carol. White speaking, how can I help you? It's Smith. The web modifications you did are causing problems again. Can you fix it quickly? Get an engineer on it. It seemed that a part of the web page we worked on for their company was malfunctioning, and they wanted it fixed quickly. But that issue was already fixed last month, and after rechecking, there were no problems. Didn't you tamper with it somehow? Of course not. It's your company's incompetence that's causing this. Fix it fast. Reluctantly, I explained the situation to our engineers and asked them to handle it. However, they reported that the malfunction was not due to anything they did, but rather someone else's interference. Ms. Smith, I have a report. According to our engineers, the malfunction is occurring in a part that our company didn't handle. Maybe someone else tampered with it? What are you talking about? I won't accept such an excuse. The malfunction caused a lot of inconvenience to our customers. I didn't want to admit any fault on our company's part without evidence, but decided to apologize to resolve the situation. I'm sorry. Oh well. It's not a big deal this time. We'll be billing you for the consignment fee. What? What are you saying? Do it for free. She hung up unilaterally. It wasn't our company's fault. Carol, this president's daughter, pretends to know about the web but complains like this, making our engineers reluctant to work with her company. According to the engineers, it seemed likely that an inexperienced engineer had made some sort of error that caused the malfunction. Even though our company's engineers didn't cause the issue, we were called in and ended up not getting paid for it. I kept getting complaints from the engineers, and she blamed me unilaterally, so I was about to burst with stress. That evening, I decided to go to a bar I had wanted to try for a while, hoping to unwind with a drink. I planned to enjoy a quiet drink alone. I ordered my favorite food, sipped my preferred drink, and was pleasantly tipsy when I noticed two women enjoying their drinks at the table behind me. One of them was Carol. Maybe she was with a colleague. The woman with her was elegantly dressed. You know, the employees at that secondary contractor are so incompetent, it's frustrating. The woman with her just nodded and smiled, lightly agreeing. Secondary contractor. Were they talking about our company? There might be other secondary contractors they work with, but I was curious and listened in. By then, my buzz had worn off. So, this weird auntie is my contact at the secondary contractor. You'd think salespeople would be more stylish, right? But this auntie looks so ordinary. The other woman just chuckled without comment. Carol kept talking. That auntie, she's divorced and used to be a housewife. It's so uncool. A woman who doesn't care about her appearance. I wonder what she's thinking. It's kind of amusing to me, a good stress reliever. It was definitely about me, divorced and a former housewife. I don't pay much attention to my looks. More like, I can't afford to spend much on it. So I always wear the same kinds of clothes and hardly put on makeup. I couldn't stand being there anymore and left the bar. Unnoticed by Carol. The bar, meant to be my stress reliever, ended up being another unpleasant experience. Back home, exhaustion washed over me. I looked at my face in the mirror. Tired, with dark circles under my eyes. I should put on some makeup. I opened my makeup box. Just powder and one old lipstick. I couldn't even remember when I bought them. I opened my closet. It was filled with plain clothes. I sighed. When I was married, I couldn't buy anything with my husband's money, and after the divorce, I had no assets and was desperate for money. I never had a fulfilling life as a woman, balancing work and personal life. But Carol, who doesn't know me, shouldn't be saying such things about me. Tears fell as I looked in the mirror, lost in thought. The next day at work, Carol called again, and I was stressed out from the start. What can I do for you? I need to talk to you. Can you come to our office right away? Yes, I understand. I canceled my other plans and headed to her company. I've arrived. Oh, sit down. I have some good news. Good news. Frankly, good news from she made me feel uneasy. We're starting a new project, and I want your company to handle it. What kind of project? It's completely unrelated to web development. We're thinking of distributing free catalogs to boost sales. Can you handle the production? Our company isn't a printing company, but we have the technology to do more than just web development and advertising. We might be able to use that. I'll check with our company first. By the way, how much are we talking about for the contract? Well, considering everything including subsidiaries and affiliates, it should be around $300,000. A $300,000 order is a significant deal for a secondary contractor like us. It's pressure, but it could also be a big opportunity. I immediately consulted with our president. He tends to leave decisions to the staff, and he quickly gave the go-ahead. It's that kind of company, but I thought I could figure out the production process from scratch. Ms. Smith, regarding our recent discussion, our company will take care of it. Thanks. Let's get the contract sorted then. I think we need about 140 copies. And then, things moved forward. I started preparing for the catalog production, reaching out within the company and to acquaintances. It cost money, but completing the project would bring in $300,000. I managed to make a sample first and showed it to Carol. This looks good. Proceed with it. She approved it surprisingly quickly. The production seemed to be going well. But on the day we started printing, she called and said, "Actually, I've decided to cancel the printing. Consider the contract null and void." What? This means your company is going under. She said this to me with a triumphant tone. What are you talking about? This is a huge loss, and it's troubling. It's troubling, but you're just a secondary contractor. Why not find a new job if your company's sales drop? I reached my breaking point with stress and anger. I won't forgive this. I muttered to myself, canceling a $300,000 order on the day of, it's more than just a loss. Our company is small, and being a secondary contractor, we're always at risk of going under. But the printing was already underway. The catalogs would be finished in a week. I couldn't sleep that night. How will I explain this to the president tomorrow? The next day, feeling demotivated, I couldn't bring myself to go to the office, so I spent my time at a cafe and walking around to escape reality. That's when I bumped into one of my mom friends from my housewife days. Olivia. Emily? Is that you? It was a reunion after a long time. Olivia had given me advice on amicable divorce and was someone I relied on a lot for child-related issues. Despite being the same age, she was like a big sister to me. She used to work as a legal advisor for a corporation but now works freelance, focusing on educational outreach for fraud victims. Emily, we haven't seen each other since your divorce. How are you? I'm fine, thanks. I'm working hard now. You're doing well. We ended up chatting for so long that we decided to continue our conversation over drinks at a nearby bar. I couldn't help but vent about my work frustrations to Olivia, whom I hadn't seen in a while. Then she said, "Is the company you work for a secondary contractor for Dynamic Creations Incorporated? How did you know?" I was their counsel for a while, so I'm familiar with the inside story. I remembered that she had been a legal advisor for various companies and knew a lot about different industries. So, what's the real deal? Being a secondary contractor, we can't really oppose them. But their demands are often unreasonable. What's the industry's reputation like? It's bad, just between us. Really? Yes. It's not so much the company, but the president's daughter who has a particularly bad reputation. I thought so. I had always thought Carol was just a mean person who looked down on us because we were a secondary contractor. In my venting session, I decided to tell Olivia about the sudden cancellation of the $300,000 order. So, you're dealing with Mr. Smith's daughter, right? Do you interact with her a lot? It's not just interaction, it's been really tough lately. I told her everything about receiving the $300,000 catalog order, researching techniques, getting cooperation from within the company, and just when I thought we were about to complete a significant project, it got canceled on the day of. I couldn't stop talking. Remembering it all, I felt so frustrated that tears came to my eyes. Emily, that must have been hard. Are you okay? Wipe your tears. I have to report this to the president tomorrow. I might get fired, and our company's revenue will suffer. Well. She thought for a while. Leave this matter to me. What? Just tell me what you want. I'll think about it. There might be something I can do. Who would have thought someone would offer to help like this? I was grateful she was even willing to listen, let alone take it on as her own issue. Tell me what you want. First, I want the contract to be executed properly since it's a big deal for our company. If that's not possible, I want compensation of $300,000. I conveyed my desperate hopes to her. Understood. Anything else? I want Carol to suffer. It's a personal grudge, though. I hesitated to share such resentment with Olivia, but I did it anyway. Okay, got it. Could you report the facts to your president and ask him to contact me? Contact Olivia from the president? What does that mean? Does she have some connection with our company, like being a legal advisor or something? Should I have the president contact you? Yes. Your company's president knows my husband. You didn't know, did you? She smiled confidently, as if to say, leave it to me. I really appreciate this connection. I'll do as you say. Let me consider how to thank you later on. After that conversation, I immediately went back to the office and explained everything to the president. As expected, he was furious. Not with me, but with Dynamic Creations Incorporated. After I mentioned Olivia, he seemed to understand the situation and said he would contact her, then I went back to work. The printing of the catalog had started. There were 140 copies. What to do with this inventory? Then I got a call from Olivia. I've talked with your president. Leave the rest to me. I'd like to come and see the catalog you're currently making. I have the president's permission. Okay. I'll be waiting. About 10 minutes later, Olivia came to the company. She looked at the catalog. Dynamic Creations Incorporated's achievements are all lies. But I'll buy these. What? If I buy them, your company won't suffer a loss. Then, pretending to be an employee from here, I'll visit Dynamic Creations Incorporated under the guise of being your new contact. We'll talk more later. I decided to leave everything to her. I've got an idea. First, we'll pretend you're quitting, and I'll be your replacement to greet Carol. Me quitting? Yes, she looks down on secondary contractors, including you. If you quit, she will target me next. That made sense, but what was her plan? My interest was piqued. That could be true. From there, it's my turn to shine. Just wait and see. Okay. I'll act like I'm quitting. Thus, I went with Olivia to greet Carol. Nice to meet you. I'm Olivia Wilson. What's going on? Ms. White, what does this mean? I'm resigning, effective immediately. Really? So, Ms. Wilson is your replacement? Then Olivia greeted her. Yes, I look forward to working with you. After a brief silence, Carol repeated, You're leaving, huh? Well, it makes sense after losing the $300,000 deal. Yes, I'm leaving. Because of you. Olivia interrupted our conversation and took over. Both of you, please calm down. Ms. Smith, about the catalog, you wanted to cancel it on the day of printing? Yes, I forgot I had already ordered from another secondary contractor. It's just a small company, so stopping the printing on the same day should be feasible, right? Unfortunately, the cancellation was not possible, so the printing is complete. We will send the invoice for payment. Carol paused, seemingly unprepared. That's impossible. Another secondary contractor is already printing it. That sounds like you just forgot you had ordered from another company and panicked, canceling our company's order. I cornered Carol with the realization of her mistake. That's irrelevant. I can't pay your company $300,000. In that case, the printed material becomes our property, and we'll take responsibility for sending it to your company's affiliates. If you're not charging us, that's fine. My boss won't find out about my mistake. Here's the list of companies. We'll arrange the shipment right away. Thank you. I bid farewell to Carol as I left. Thank you for everything, Ms. Smith. Hey, White. Blaming me for your resignation is unfair. It's not my fault. You're going bankrupt anyway. Are you joking, huh? Your company is the one going bankrupt. What? Olivia echoed my sentiment. Your company is the one facing bankruptcy. We left Carol's company. On our way out, Olivia was arranging to send the catalogs to the companies Carol was dealing with, using Carol's company name and hers as the sender. In fact, the catalogs were blank inside. We managed to stop the content from being printed on the day of printing. A few days later, what kind of spiteful thing did you do by quitting? Carol called me furiously. What's wrong? The companies are angry because the catalogs we sent are blank. I'm getting non-stop complaint calls. Imagining her overwhelmed with complaints, I almost laughed but held back. I'm sorry. That's not enough. Thanks to you, deals I was about to close are getting canceled. I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction. That's unfortunate. I hung up the phone unilaterally. I felt strangely uplifted. The next day, Carol made an unexpected visit to our office. White, I have a request before you leave. What is it? I doubt there's much I can do. I'll pay the $300,000. But I need you to tell the companies that the blank catalogs were a mistake. If we lose these deals, I don't know what will happen to my company. Seeing her weakened, I pressed further. The catalogs being blank was a terrible mistake. I'm sorry, I had no idea. It's not about that. Please contact the companies and apologize, saying it was your company's mistake. Please, do something. I won't do it. I've been persistently mistreated by you, and I almost suffered a $300,000 loss because of you. She started crying. I'll pay the $300,000. That has already been paid. What? This is a company issue, so I explained the situation to your father, the president, and he has already made the payment. Carol realized that her father, the last person she wanted to know, was now aware of the issue, and her attitude changed. I'm sorry, it was all my fault. If this gets out, I won't be able to stay at the company because of my many mistakes. I feel terrible for causing such a loss to the company and to Dad. Please forgive me. You know, if your father finds out about this, he'll be embarrassed in front of the entire company. She was on her knees, crying. I don't want to embarrass my dad. What should I do? Tell me, Ms. White. While inwardly thinking it's not my problem, I watched her crying. Shall I tell your father about all the harassment you've inflicted on our company? I'm sorry. Please, no more. I'll apologize as many times as needed. She continued to cry. Ms. Smith, you've always looked down on us because you're the president's daughter, right? Be honest. She shook her head desperately, denying it. You think we, the secondary contractors, would believe that? I didn't mean it that way. But if it seemed like that, I'm sorry. I watched her pitiful figure for a while, but as she didn't stop crying, I left her and went back to my work. By evening, she was gone. She's gone. My retribution is over. I muttered to myself and headed home. Carol, due to the catalog incident, faced a barrage of complaints from companies and was apparently fired by her father, the president. Her company suffered significant losses and a drop in revenue, as expected. Thanks to my friend Olivia, I was saved in many ways. Having actually resigned from the secondary contractor, I'm now helping with Olivia's educational outreach, and through her referral, have managed to step up to a sales position at a larger company. I'm truly grateful to her and treasure our connection as I continue to work hard. So if you've taken painkillers, you shouldn't be in pain anymore. vacuum the floor. He stared on the painkiller package I had just taken. I will. Please wait a little for the medicine to work. When I told him that, he sighed loudly and stood up. It's not like I was asking him to do the chores, he could have waited a bit. I was holding back my sigh, then a sharp pain shot through my back. As I fell to the floor, I saw my husband, Stephen, sitting indecently with one leg on the back of the sofa. I shocked and wondered, did he just kick me, as he laughed coldly. It's enough with the period pain excuses, just vacuum the floor now. My name is Mary, I'm 27 years old. I'm a typical housewife living with my husband, Stephen. I met Stephen when I joined the company where he worked. After graduating from college, I took a job in sales. Stephen was my mentor there. He was handsome with short hair, and his good looks and conversation skills attracted customers. In a sales job, successful individuals are those who possess extensive knowledge and information about the products they are selling, and can utilize these insights in their sales approach. Alternatively, it's said there's another type of successful salesperson is who can make the customer feeling to sign a contract. Stephen was definitely the latter. Initially, I only had respect for him as a successful salesman. But when I was struggling to make deals, Stephen reached out to me. Gradually, I began confiding in him. While we were going out and having meals together, and developed my feelings for him. Therefore, I was overjoyed when we started dating and ecstatic when he proposed. Our married life was filled with happiness. But there was one thing that always troubled me. The fact that I have suffered from severe menstrual pain since my school days. Initially, I used mild over-the-counter painkillers, but as my body got used to them, I needed stronger medication to get through my daily life. When we were dating, Stephen would adjust his plans according to my cycle and would comfort me when I complained about the pain. I thought this care would continue after marriage. But I was wrong. Every month, the same menstrual pain occurred. Seeing me struggle to do housework without medication, Stephen would just sigh. This didn't just start in the last few years, get used to it. He started saying that to me. We both work, but Stephen earns more and contributes a larger amount to our living expenses. My earnings wouldn't be enough for living both of us, so I put extra effort into housework. During my period, I would finish as much housework as I could while the painkillers were effective, then rest a bit on the sofa before resuming. I was doing everything in order, but to Stephen, it seemed like I was just lying down and resting. No matter how much I did, he never offered a word of comfort. Then one day, we bought a new house. We had been living in an apartment, but we purchased a larger home in case we had children. Stephen's parents love socializing and often host parties with relatives. Stephen thought it was a perfect opportunity to show off our new house, and decided to invite the relatives for a party at our place. Once he made up his mind, Stephen was quick to act. He set the date for the party and handed me a list of relatives who would be attending. The list included not only names but also ages and food preferences. To my surprise, Stephen, make sure to prepare dishes that cater to everyone's preferences. I won't forgive any shortcuts like buying ready-made appetizers, he said in an annoyed tone. It was challenging to plan the menu as everyone had different likes and dislikes, and some favorite foods of one person were disliked by another. After days of sleepless nights for planning the menu, my period started behind than I expected. I took painkillers, finished cleaning the rooms, and decorated them with flowers the day before. I placed air fresheners and repeatedly went over the next day's party steps in my mind. Then that night, after preparing the menu, finally I went to bed. While I was preparing with the help of painkillers, Stephen had daily evening drinking and laughing loudly at the TV. I remembered Stephen like that as I fell asleep in bed. The next morning, I got up before Stephen to make breakfast and started cooking for the party while tidying up. I was checking the time constantly and kept moving. I arranged the finished dishes on the table and carefully checked every area, from the entrance to the living room and the bathroom. But it seemed the effect of the painkillers was wearing off, as I could no longer to bear the gradually intensifying pain, so sat down on the sofa. I wanted to lie down, but since I had managed to do my hair and makeup nicely, and didn't know when the relatives would arrive, I decided to just sit. As I turned my gaze towards Stephen, he was watching TV, a glass of alcohol in hand. Despite the fact that relatives were about to arrive, I wanted to say don't start drinking now to Stephen, but the words wouldn't come out. Noticing my gaze, Stephen glared at me. "What, you're giving me that don't drink at this time look?" "It's not that. I'm getting nervous too. And you're just lounging on the sofa. You finished the preparations, right?" Stephen put his glass on the table and walked towards me. I felt a strange tension in his stare, a bad feeling growing inside me. Everything is in order. But my period started and the painkiller's effect is wearing off, so I'm taking a short break. I'll get moving soon. Stephen sighed and glared at me. "Don't coddle yourself over a mere stomachache. My mom never did that." Right after those words, just as I thought Stephen had come up behind me, I was suddenly kicked in my back and fell off the sofa to the floor. By the time I realized that I had been kicked by someone, I was already on the floor, and it took me a while to grasp what had happened. Meanwhile, Stephen sat down on the sofa nonchalantly. And, unbelievably, he started playing games on his mobile phone. I couldn't understand what was happening or the situation I was in. All I knew was that Stephen, without a single word of apology, was laughing and enjoying his game. When I tried to stand up, suddenly Stephen fell to the floor. Looking up to see why he fell, I saw Stephen's dad, Paul. He was standing behind the sofa. Paul looked furious, and I couldn't take my eyes off him. "What's going on?" Stephen couldn't be understanding the situation and checked the sofa in panic. "Oh, Paul? Did you just push me?" While Stephen was picking up his phone from the floor, and he asked Paul. "I didn't push you, I shoved you, Stephen." "What? Why would Paul shove me?" "You fools, what do you mean for kicking someone in the back? And that someone is your wife, Stephen." Stephen seemed a bit taken aback by Paul's anger. "I was just a bit bold because I was drinking." Stephen tried to respond, but Paul glared at him, his excuse not mitigating the situation. "Don't blame it on the alcohol. Whatever the reason, a man should never resort to violence against a woman." "What do you mean by reason?" "This is like discipline." "Discipline?" "Yes, she was resting on the sofa even though the preparations weren't finished. So I was teaching her that if you don't work you don't have a rest. It's part of discipline." "Right, Mary?" Suddenly asked by Stephen. I didn't know how to respond. I had properly finished the preparations and sat on the sofa just to rest a bit. Should I tell the truth because I did everything correctly? As I hesitated, Paul also turned his gaze towards me. "Mary, is what Stephen's saying true?" I couldn't find the words to reply. If I told the truth, Stephen might get scolded by Paul and spoil his mood, especially with relatives about to arrive. I didn't want to cause any trouble for the relatives who were coming to see our new house. I was about to agree with Stephen. "Mary, your silence is an answer, isn't it?" "Eh?" Confused by Paul's words, then I asked back. If what Stephen said was true, Mary would have immediately agreed. But Mary is silent. That suggests that something, or everything is not true what Stephen said. I felt as if Paul had seen through everything. I opened my mouth to tell the truth. "The preparations are already done. It's just that I am feeling a bit unwell today." "What? It's just your period." Stephen interrupted my words. Unable to say it directly in front of Paul, I tried to phrase it differently, but Stephen's lack of tact brought my tears from my eyes. "Saying you're unwell over a mere period. If the preparations are done, then say so." I thought Mary was just lazily sitting on the sofa again, not finishing the preparations. Stephen's words were final. He didn't remember what I said earlier about almost finishing the preparations. He hadn't seen that I had been preparing since early morning, or rather, since yesterday, doing all the work myself without his help. He wasn't aware that I had taken painkillers to manage. He had decided to host the party here on his own and didn't help with any other preparations or cooking. A sense of injustice began to grow inside me. Listen to this. She's been complaining about severe menstrual pain since before we got married, but she still can't get used to the pain. Every month it's like this. My mom was never like this, right, Paul? It seems I was right to come early to help Mary since you said you would entertain us as the inconsiderate host. What? I'm inconsiderate? Not Mary? Yes, it's you! You insisted on having the party here, but didn't cooperate with Mary in preparations. Had you worked together, you would have understood how hard she worked and how much she was suffering. Instead, you started drinking before guests arrived. The one who was lounging around was you, Stephen. Stephen was clearly frightened by Paul's yelling. I didn't want Stephen to end up regretting like I do. I tried to educate you with that feeling. Paul pulled a chair from the dining table, sat down, and sighed heavily. Patricia was like Mary, suffered from severe menstrual pain. Being a man, I had no knowledge about menstruation, and it wasn't an information-rich era like now. Plus, her mother used to say she was weak for not managing her condition, so I thought menstrual pain was just a lack of self-management. Paul spoke slowly, seemingly recalling the past. Back then, painkillers were weak. Patricia, a housewife living with in-laws, was forced to do all the chores, even during severe menstrual pain. Then, Patricia collapsed. We rushed her to the hospital, and she was diagnosed with endometriosis, which shattered her dream of giving Stephen siblings. Stephen asked Paul in a small voice. It varies by individual, and not everyone ends up like that. But excessive endurance of menstrual pain can lead to illness, and Patricia did become ill. She faced stress from housework, childcare, inconsiderate to parents' in-laws, and an unsupportive husband, eventually leading to infertility. I blamed the era, and also her mother, but it was all wrong. I should have understood for her. We can't experience their pain, so I should have listened and accepted her reality. But I didn't, and it was my fault, blindly agreeing with her mother. I regret not knowing and still do. Patricia supported Paul's shoulder as he spoke in a somber tone. I could only eye contact to Patricia in acknowledgement, who wore a sad smile as she said, "Sorry for intruding." Paul tried hard to understand. Despite his busy work, he often helped with chores and even cut ties with his own parents. Patricia looked at Paul lovingly. It was the least I could do. I didn't want to burden Patricia anymore. I wanted us three to live happily, so I did what I had to. But cutting ties with parents is a big decision. I didn't want you to have to make such decisions, so I tried to show you my mistakes. But it seems none of it got through to you. Unable to bear the tense atmosphere, Stephen spoke in an inappropriately cheerful voice. Paul, you're exaggerating. In my memory, Mom was sick in bed, but I don't remember her being bedridden due to her period. Maybe you're just remembering it as worse than it was? Patricia's hand on Paul's shoulder trembled slightly. Gently stroking her hand, Paul glared at Stephen. You just forgot. Patricia didn't want to worry you and tried to hide it as much as possible. If pain were just a matter of willpower, it wouldn't lead to illness. But virtually, Patricia did suffer from menstrual pain and had to lie in bed. I remember you coming home from school and complaining about her always sleeping. I even talked to you about it, explaining it wasn't laziness but a health issue. You didn't care, did you? Not only did you ignore Mary, but you also never saw Patricia's struggles. Paul's words weighed heavily on Stephen, his shoulders visibly drooping. I didn't know what to say or if it was even my place to speak in such an atmosphere. Then, the doorbell rang. It was 5 minutes before the appointed time, and I hurried to answer the door, cradling my aching stomach. On the screen, relatives were visible. I quickly responded and rushed to the entrance. Opening the door, the relatives greeted us with a bouquet arranged for our new housewarming. I thanked them and led them into the living room with due respect. As the relatives entered the living room, the atmosphere was still tense between the parents-in-law and Stephen, causing the relatives to exchange glances. "What happened, Paul?" one of the relatives asked Paul. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate Stephen's new house. Sorry for the bad atmosphere, we were just arguing." "Does arguing usually mess up the sofa and cushions like this?" He misunderstood Mary resting on the sofa due to poor health as laziness and pushed her off. I was scolding him for that. Hearing Paul's words, the relatives' expressions turned to disbelief, and a younger-looking woman came over to me. "Are you okay? You must be tired from all the preparations." I shook my head in response. "No, just severe menstrual pain." "Just? What did you say?" "There's menstrual leave at work, you know. I've used it too. Everyone's pain varies, but when it's really bad, you can apply for it at work. Why can't you rest at home?" She said this and turned to Stephen with momentum. "What?" Stephen, taken aback, was met with cold stares from the parents-in-law and the relatives. Unable to bear the scrutiny, Stephen rushed into his room. Despite Stephen's absence, no one followed him. It seemed the relatives knew about Patricia's condition, and even the men showed understanding. The parents-in-law immediately came to me, apologizing for their son's behavior, while the relatives admired the new house and praised my cooking. No one blamed me. They were impressed with the food and showered me with compliments. I began to enjoy myself as the painkillers started to work. After a while, I received an email from Stephen. It said that because of me, he couldn't enjoy the gathering at all. He wrote about being scolded by Paul and having no allies among the relatives, wondering why it all had to be him. I was annoyed he chose to email rather than call. As I contemplated how to respond, Patricia glanced at my phone. Seeing the message, and she stood up. Paul was seeing that, then asked, "What's going on?" Patricia snatched the mobile phone from me and handed it to Paul. When Paul looked at the phone, he also stood up, just like Patricia had. "He still hasn't understood anything. It seems I need to take him home and re-educate him from the basics." Although unexpected, Paul and Patricia said this, looking at each other. Later, the relatives also agreed with the idea of re-educating Stephen, and they seemed fully committed to it. After a while, sensing the atmosphere, the relatives tactfully left, and Patricia went to Stephen's room and dragging him out. Both Paul and Patricia took Stephen by the arm, and he was led away without a chance to protest. About a week later, Stephen was taken back to his parents' house. I received an email from him. According to it, he mentioned that Patricia was making him extensively study about the female body and the difficulties of menstrual pain. He was being made to do household chores under Paul's supervision, assuming Patricia was in pain. The email sounded like complaints about balancing work and housework. I laughed when reading it, thinking about how Paul and Patricia had said they would re-educate him from the basics, and it was really happening. I wondered if Stephen now understood a bit of my feelings, which made me smile. During this time, I took the opportunity to focus on my menstrual health. Following the relatives' advice that severe menstrual pain should be checked by a gynecologist, I visited the hospital while Stephen was away. Because of the advice on medication, daily routines, and precautions was helpful. Life without Stephen's comments was surprisingly comfortable. I could live at my own pace and lie on the sofa when I felt tired. It felt like a life where I could take care of myself. I somewhat hoped for more time like this. Partly due to Patricia's intervention, I enjoyed this slow-paced life and didn't reply to Stephen's emails. Few weeks later, when Stephen returned with his parents, the parents-in-law, who came straight to the dining table, made Stephen sit in a chair in front of them and pulled out a green paper from an envelope. It turned out to be a divorce application. I thought, could this really be a divorce right here and now? But Stephen was filling in the necessary information with a pen. Stephen began filling it out, and when he finished, Paul spoke solemnly. "Mary, if Stephen ever behaves badly towards you again, feel free to submit this signed divorce application." Paul's eyes were serious, and Stephen's too. During our separation, Stephen was apparently re-educated by his parents-in-law and promised to change his behavior. Since then, Stephen has kept his promise, not showing arrogance and even willingly doing housework, especially during my period. Gradually, he stopped making derogatory comments about menstruation. Our life has become more peaceful, and I am relieved. From now on, I plan to live without overexerting myself, paying attention to my health, and taking care of myself.
Fiancé, the one you've promised to marry. Once upon a time, I had a fiancé, but I didn't end up sharing my life with him because of my sister. I was in deep despair back then, but now I found new happiness. And I want to show my sister and my ex-fiancé just that. My name is Catherine. I'm not particularly beautiful, just an average office worker. But back then, I had a man who had promised to marry me. His name was Bob. Bob was a handsome guy, working in a reputable company, the so-called hottie. We were really happy back then. Happiness that I thought would last forever. But the cruel reality dealt me a harsh hand. I couldn't get married to Bob. The cause of it all was my sister. My sister's name is Sophie. Sophie has always been interested in fashion, and she is still as fashion conscious as ever. In fact, Sophie was always much more conscious about her appearance than me, and was always pretty. Therefore, Sophie had been popular with boys since she was in middle school. She even once was an amateur model for a fashion magazine. Because of that, Sophie dreamed of becoming a model. When I graduated from college and was working at a regular company, I was once invited to dinner by a business partner. That partner was Bob. One day, after having connected with Bob a few times and occasionally going out for meals together, something unexpected happened. That day, Bob invited me for dinner after work. Naturally, I had no reason to refuse and went out for the meal. On the way back that evening, Bob confessed his feelings for me. I was surprised at his sudden confession, but I also had feelings for him, so we ended up dating. After a year of dating, Bob proposed to me, and I was overjoyed. Of course I accepted his proposal. A few days later, Bob and I visited my parents' house to report our engagement and to greet them. My parents were, of course, thrilled. We talked about wedding plans, and I was very happy. But not everyone was pleased. That person was my younger sister, Sophie. Sophie was surprised to learn that I was getting married, and was even more taken aback when she saw who I was marrying. Sophie, who was more attractive and had been asked out by various men, always looked down on me, who had little romantic experience. I don't want my embarrassing sister to be known to my friends. That was what Sophie would always say. The sister who she deemed uncool was getting married before her, and to a successful man from a famous company. This seemed to hurt Sophie's pride even more. But I was completely oblivious to Sophie's feelings. I should have noticed her attitude at this point. One day, Sophie asked, "If you're going to be my brother-in-law, can we exchange contact information?" Bob and I saw no reason to refuse, so we readily agreed. Since I was about to leave my job, there were many days when I had to stay late for the transition process. Then on a day when my parents were out of town, Sophie took a certain action. In hindsight, it was probably a plan she had thought of from the beginning. Once I retired, I planned to move away from my family home and start living with Bob. She probably wanted to execute her plan while I was still at home. Sophie first called Bob to our house. "Bob, my sister suddenly came home sick. Our parents are out of town, and I'm feeling uneasy being alone. Could you come over?" Sophie lied, saying that I had cut my work short due to a sudden illness. Bob, who was just about to head home from work, hurried to our house without suspecting a thing. I rushed over because I heard Catherine was ill. "Where is she?" Of course, I wasn't there. It was only natural for Bob to think so. However, Sophie confessed, "I'm sorry, Bob. I lied to you. My sister isn't sick. She's still at work." Upon hearing this, Bob didn't get angry at Sophie, but instead asked, "Why would you lie like that?" "I just really needed to talk to you, Bob," Sophie started to explain. Having wrapped up work, I reached home and was surprised. It was because Bob was there. Yet, without really questioning it, I cheerfully said, "Oh, you're here." Later, I was about to experience the most intense despair and sadness I've ever felt in my life. "Catherine, I'm sorry. I want to break up." It was sudden. I was unable to comprehend the meaning of his words immediately. "What? You're kidding, right? Break up? What do you mean?" Just as I was pressing Bob for answers, Sophie showed up. "Catherine, actually, I'm dating Sophie. I'm sorry, Catherine. I've fallen in love with Sophie more than you." Still confused and in disbelief, Sophie then said to me, "I'm sorry, but Bob has decided to marry me." I was totally lost. Then Sophie continued, "You might not want to attend our wedding ceremony, but do come to the reception, won't you?" All I could do after that was cry. Sophie had taken away my fiancé. I was discarded. Both my dad and mom were extremely worried. For a while, I couldn't leave my room. Since I'd already quit my job, there was nothing I could do. I received several messages from my coworkers asking when the wedding was. I told them it was going to be a simple ceremony with just family. Months later, I found myself in a strange place. Here, I'd start my life anew. I wanted to be happy again. Truly happy this time. After breaking up with Bob, I was holed up for a while, but a certain emotion was born within me. Why do I have to suffer like this? Forget that guy, and let's start over. Things progressed rapidly from there. I talked to my dad and mom, deciding to leave home and live on my own. A completely unfamiliar place, but it was a really pleasant place, rich in greenery and peaceful. My parents didn't stop me and even helped me a lot during the move. After the move, while taking a break, I heard this from my mom. "A few days after you locked yourself in your room, Bob came. He told me everything that happened between you two, and then he apologized." I didn't understand why my parents were apologizing. Of course, what Bob did is unforgivable. His parents came to apologize too, even kneeling down. But we heard about Sophie as well. "I know you can't forgive her, Catherine, but Sophie is also a daughter to us," my parents explained. Both my dad and mom were distressed. She had done something terrible to me. Of course, they couldn't forgive such a person. But Sophie didn't listen to them, and it seems she went to Bob. Since then, Bob had been coming to our house at the same time every day, apologizing and asking for his marriage to Sophie to be approved. Because of Bob's actions, my parents had no choice but to accept. That's why they apologized to me, for accepting his marriage to Sophie. Honestly, I didn't care anymore, but I could painfully understand my parents' feelings. It's all in the past now, it's okay. Besides, I'll meet someone better in the future, I replied positively, holding back the tears. My mom was crying. My father looked apologetic, but I said to him, "When I have children, I'm going to rely on you a lot." Both my dad and mom responded with smiles. Mom was very concerned, saying, "Don't hesitate to get in touch if anything comes up." As I started getting used to my new life and had some peace of mind, I began working at a small restaurant. The staff was small in number, but the place was very bright and I really liked the friendly atmosphere everyone had. The manager was a man named Steve, who was often teased by the part-timers. Watching their banter was enjoyable and created a warm atmosphere. A few months after I started working, a fateful event that would impact my future took place. I was confessed to by Steve. It happened when he was giving me a ride home after work. To be honest, I was unsure. Steve was a really good guy. Above all, very kind. He had both the looks and the personality that would be attractive to the opposite sex, but I was still hung up on that incident. I was scared that I might be abandoned again. Steve seemed to notice my hesitation and told me that I didn't have to give an immediate answer, and he went home for the day. Things were a little awkward for a while, but thanks to the usual banter with the part-timers and Steve's kindness, I didn't fret too much. I guess my heart had already made a decision. During one break, I learned something about Steve. Turns out, Steve had been betrayed by someone he was dating and had a terrible experience at the place he worked before this restaurant. Steve and I had the same experience. We both had been betrayed by someone we loved. That day, I decided to go home with Steve so I could hear more about his story. As we were walking home, Steve shared his past. He was actually in charge of a store before he came here. But due to certain incidents, the store lost trust and ended up closing. And Steve was held responsible and lost his job. After hearing his story, I decided to tell Steve why I came to this place. After I finished, Steve said, "You did great." He said that to me, who, despite the pain, stood up and faced forward again. I was overjoyed. And I realized that this was exactly what I wanted to hear. I did my best. I was betrayed by someone I loved and went through a tough time, but I managed to bounce back. Honestly, it was very hard. And I told Steve, "You did great too." Steve was smiling, and then I gave my answer to his confession from that day. I'm a bit of a handful, but I hope you'll be patient with me. After that, the teasing from the part-timers at the restaurant increased, but they were genuinely happy. Congrats! Wishing you happiness forever. It's too early for that line. So there will be a time eventually. I'll say it again then. You better let me say it, or else. Oh, wait. Steve was a little flustered. I was laughing. Everyone was laughing. It was pure bliss. That was a typical day until a certain point. I was proposed to for the second time in my life. Of course, I accepted the proposal. I was determined to find happiness this time, and I believed that I could be truly happy with Steve. So I headed over to my parents' house for the first time in a while. They were thrilled. I told them everything about Steve, and they said, "Please make our daughter happy. I promise I'll make Catherine happy." He replied with firmness and confidence. We chatted for a while, then my dad hesitantly said, "Sophie and Bob are going to get married." They said an invitation might come, but I didn't need to stress over it. I wasn't bothered anyway, because I was happy too. In fact, I wanted to flaunt my happiness. When I told my parents that, they said, "If Catherine says so, Steve, we're counting on you if anything happens." A few days later, an invitation to Sophie's wedding arrived. I decided to attend, of course. I responded saying that both of us would be attending. Steve and I had only legally married because Sophie was planning her wedding. We figured it would put too much pressure on our parents and relatives if we had our weddings back to back. We had vowed to have our wedding ceremony once things had settled down. On the day of Sophie's wedding, Steve and I were heading to the venue together. We were reunited with Sophie and Bob, whom we haven't seen in a long time. Bob looked somewhat worn out. During the family introductions, I introduced Steve, saying, "This is my husband, Steve. I'm very proud of him." For some reason, Sophie was visibly surprised when I introduced Steve, which was memorable. On the other hand, I had something I desperately wanted to ask Bob. What had happened between him and Sophie on the day when neither my parents nor I were around? Initially, Bob found it hard to talk, but gradually began to share. Apparently, when Sophie called him on that day and he learned that I was suddenly ill, Bob decided to wait for me. Sophie then came in with strong liquor, saying it would be a waste not to enjoy. Bob, not a heavy drinker, had a couple of drinks and ended up getting drunk. Then, according to him, Sophie saw her chance and started to seduce him. Bob was too drunk to make sound judgments, so he gave in to her advances. Sophie was stunning. In addition, she had a great figure, so it's understandable for a regular guy to fall for her advances. Even so, Bob and I were engaged. However, Bob succumbed to the temptation, and from that point on, he started to pay attention to Sophie. Even after sharing this story, Bob kept apologizing to me, but at that moment, he seemed like such a small man to me. Honestly, I couldn't have cared less. I was just relieved to know the truth. Meanwhile, Steve and Sophie were talking about something. I was curious about it, but since Sophie's wedding was imminent, I decided to ask later. On the way home, I asked Steve, "Were you a bit upset when you were talking to Sophie?" "Well, as I told you before, she was my ex who betrayed me, and that's not all. She's the reason why I lost my job." I was utterly surprised. What a small world. Moreover, the fact that she was the cause of the closure of Steve's shop made it even more shocking. I decided to dig deeper. Apparently, a few months after Sophie started dating Steve, she had an affair with a certain designer. It seems Sophie thought it would be more beneficial for her to date someone in the modeling industry, even though she was dating Steve. Upon accidentally discovering this fact, Steve naturally got angry at Sophie. But Sophie in turn got angry at him, and they broke up. However, Sophie's anger didn't subside, and she created a fake photo of foreign objects in the dishes taken at Steve's restaurant and shared it on social media. At the time, Sophie was also doing some model work, so she had quite a few followers, and the photo spread rapidly. It even caught the attention of Steve's boss, who had left the business to him. Due to the decreased revenue, the restaurant ended up closing. As a result, Steve was fired, bearing the responsibility. Naturally, he held a grudge against this incident. However, since he didn't know who was responsible, he didn't know where to direct his anger. In the midst of all this, he learned the truth when a friend invited him for a drink. A friend of Steve's girlfriend happened to know Sophie, and had seen her bragging on social media about causing a restaurant to close. Of course, Steve's friend didn't know that the now closed shop was Steve's. Steve, who unexpectedly found the culprit, could no longer do anything, so he decided to start over in a different place. That's when he met me. I apologized to Steve. I'm sorry for the horrible things my sister did. Honestly, I'm the sister of the person who messed up Steve's life. I didn't know what to do. I seriously thought that Steve might hate me. But Steve said, "It's in the past and it's not your fault, Catherine." I was honestly relieved. And once again, we decided to be happy together. Later, Sophie was finally punished. Sophie was going to do a photo shoot, and the place she visited for the shoot, it was our home, of all places. Indeed, it was rich in greenery and likely to take good pictures. Sophie seemed to be considering becoming a model, using this photo shoot as a stepping stone. The incident occurred at a restaurant she visited for dinner. That restaurant was none other than Steve's. I wasn't working at Steve's place anymore, so I heard about it later. As soon as they entered, both Steve and Sophie recognized each other. And immediately, Steve said, "I'm sorry, I can't let you enter," and refused Sophie's group from entering. Of course, the staff got angry and asked what was going on. Steve explained everything, what Sophie had done in the past and the hardships he had endured because of her. "She has a criminal record and I have solid evidence. I don't want to go through the same thing again, so I refuse to let her enter." No one could say anything, and Sophie seemed to have turned pale. Furthermore, Steve said he would tell the president of the company Sophie was about to join about her past. The person who scouted Sophie was shocked and asked Steve to quit, but Steve's anger didn't subside. In the end, Sophie's photo shoot was canceled, and the incident spread in the industry, crushing her dream of becoming a model. Nobody wants to deal with a person who caused such a huge scandal in the past. On top of that, I heard from my mom that Bob's company's performance has been getting worse recently, and now he's a candidate for a demotion. She seemed worried about what would become of these two in the future. Despite such an incident, Steve and I were spending happy days as usual. And today is our long-awaited wedding. Steve and I, we both had some hard times in the past, but now we are very happy. There was also a new life in my belly. Congratulations! Wishing you a lifetime of happiness. The crew from the shop where we first met are laughing and repeating this familiar phrase. Thank you. And so, in front of everyone, Steve and I vowed to always cherish our family and be happy forever.
My name is Bella. I'm just your average housewife, married for 2 years. Until I turned 27, I had pretty much zero luck in the love department. I went to an all-girls private middle and high school, followed by an all-women's university. After graduating, I worked as a receptionist at a big corporation where, unsurprisingly, all my colleagues were women. In my social circle, it was the norm for people to get invited to parties by business executives, but not for me. I never attended such gatherings. The reason was simple. Whenever I talked to men, I became so nervous that I couldn't even speak. I often received compliments on my appearance and got invited out a few times. I had dinner with some kind-hearted guys, but in the end, they'd say, "You're pretty, but there's not much else to you." Then it happened. My destiny knocked on the door. "Bella, will you go out with me?" That's what Lex, an employee from one of our client companies who always registered at my desk, said to me. People around us speculated we were dating since he would only give his contact info to me. But that wasn't the case. Whenever he tried to engage me in conversation, I just gave polite smiles like I did with everyone else. I truly thought I was destined to be single forever. But then, his confession changed everything. Can we maybe just start off as friends?" Caught off guard, that was my reply. And yet, he nodded so eagerly. It was as if his head would fall off, and he entered the office still smiling. This was a first for me. Until now, it had always been guys with clear, ulterior motives like, "Want to have dinner? Or free tonight?" But with Lex, I sense no such intentions, just pure affection. I was so thrilled. I went out with him a few times. Though I still nervous and not much of a conversationalist, he accepted me for who I was. And that's when I knew. Lex, would you like to be in a relationship with me? He was overjoyed, even to the point of tears. This all happened 2 years ago on Christmas. At that time, I felt extremely happy, thinking I'd be blessed forever with such a loving person. But the crack in the facade came when his company went bankrupt. 2 years later, I am now 29. Lex, you should probably wake up now. I called to my still sleeping husband, put on my shoes, and leave the house. Right now, I'm the only one bringing in money for our household. My husband's company went under 6 months ago, and he's been jobless ever since. He's been job hunting, but it's been rough. Not only is the economy bad, but his industry is also saturated. Even if he gets an offer, it's often for a take-home salary of just $2,000, making it difficult for him to commit to changing jobs. Despite all this, I continue to support him. Our love isn't so superficial that it would fade just because of unemployment. My salary has always been modest. We've never lived a life of luxury. We reside in a 2-bedroom rental apartment that's over 30 years old. It's not a secure building, and it's a 30-minute walk from the train station, but I was willing to compromise on many things to continue our life together. I suspected my husband still couldn't move on from the shock of his company going bankrupt. He had a few job offers, and I patiently waited, believing he'd find a good match and recover emotionally. But my hope was fleeting, and he continued to deteriorate. He even started taking his stress out on me, sometimes raising his hand in anger. He didn't leave any lasting marks, and I thought he must be suffering more than me. So I endured it, wanting to be supportive. Then a few days later, he finally landed a new job. He gave up on his previous industry and switched to a completely different one. The new place was willing to hire him despite his lack of experience, so he took the job. When he got it, I was relieved, thinking I wouldn't have to be his punching bag anymore. I'd wondered if he was becoming abusive, but it seemed like it was just a phase. Now he's working hard at the new company and even got promoted to team lead. A year has passed since then, and I turned 30. I was thinking about having kids soon, but the loving man I married seemed to have vanished.
Hey, I told you I like toast. Why did you make pancakes? And if you're gonna serve fruit, at least remove the pit.
My husband started getting angry over the smallest things and began saying awful stuff. Really? Do you have to speak like that? You're an adult, Lex. Take out the pit yourself, I retorted, losing my patience. He responded by slamming his fist into the wall, intimidating me. I'm not confrontational, but I know instinctively that his behavior is emotional abuse. Lately, I've been careful not to provoke him, but we've been fighting a lot, and I'm emotionally drained. The breaking point for me was when he took it out on me. The pressure of his new job seemed to be the root cause. He got promoted to team leader shortly after proving his worth. Not everyone's telling him he's on the fast track to becoming a department head. Unable to bear this new pressure, he started lashing out at me, the easier target. Actually, I quit my job when I turned 30 to become a housewife. I'd always planned to leave my receptionist job in my 30s to pursue something I truly wanted to do. My husband knew this, so I retired as planned at 30. But it seems he doesn't like it.
In this day and age, women need to work too. I can't support both of us on my salary alone, you know? Do you even appreciate who's providing for you?
He complains while eating, then grabs his bag and leaves for work. When he was jobless, I was the one supporting him. So why am I the one being blamed now? That was when I began to feel distant from him emotionally. One day, I returned home to find unfamiliar shoes at the door. To my surprise, my mother-in-law was lounging in the living room. "Oh, Mom, what are you doing here?" When I approached her, my mom flatly said, Didn't Lex tell you? I'm moving in here from today. I had never heard anything like this. Later, I found out the reason was that my father-in-law had passed away and my mom-in-law was feeling lonely. So my husband had suggested she moved in. Of course, no one consulted me. As I stood there stunned, mom-in-law ordered me to start making dinner. A homemaker's worth is proven by serving her family, so get on with it. Confused and frustrated, I went to the kitchen to make dinner anyway. Then as the food was nearly ready, mother-in-law came in and said, Lex hates stewed burgers. This is garbage. She dumped the almost finished dish into the trash. I was sitting inside, but oddly words failed me when I was confronted by this unexpected situation. Unable to speak up, I watched as my mom-in-law caused a scene. And then my mother-in-law started rummaging through the fridge and began cooking without asking. Finally, regaining my composure, I said, Hold on, Mom. I planned meals for the week and bought groceries accordingly. Just as I said that, he dumped flour on my head. Coughing from the flour, I continued to watch her make her dish and then demand I clean up. My husband eventually came home and was delighted to see the meal.
Oh yes, this is the kind of food I want. No need for salads. Fried stuff is the best.
Ignoring me, he happily sat down to eat with Mom. At that point, my heart felt like it had been smashed and painted over the black ink. From then on, the daily harassment from mother-in-law and the emotional abuse from my husband continued. I felt there was no place for me in this home. And even though my husband has pressed for intimacy, under the circumstances, I naturally couldn't accept. I had been avoiding getting pregnant, even though I'm already 30, because I don't want a child with this abusive man. Then finally, the last straw broke. My mom-in-law said she was feeling unwell and asked me to drive her to the hospital. I didn't want to spend time with her, but I couldn't just leave her unwell. So I begrudgingly drove her to the hospital. But when I went to pick her up, a social worker called me into a separate room. You must be having a tough time doing all the housework and childcare alone, but taking it out on your husband and mother-in-law isn't good, she said. Apparently, mother-in-law had been claiming that I caused her bruises from a fall. Worse, she'd been going to the hospital multiple times and had consulted about me every time. It seems she had chosen today to deliver the final blow. The social worker, not knowing the whole story, just blamed me. You should take better care of children and the elderly. All the while, our family doesn't even have kids. I reached my limit when I was told I might need psychiatric help. I'll sue you for violating my rights. I'm the one being abused here, not the other way around. I showed evidence for my husband's abuses and the burn marks caused deliberately by mom-in-law. The social worker said she'd need to confirm this with mom-in-law, but I refused and left the hospital on my own. Soon after, my mom-in-law and husband returned home. Apparently, mom-in-law told my husband that I'd been mean to her. Shaking, my husband said,
You're parasite leaving of me. How dare you abandon my mother?
I don't know what kind of story my mom-in-law spun for you, but judging by her fake tears, she lied again. I was tired of correcting her, so I walked out of the house ignoring both of them. That day, I didn't return home and spent the night in a business hotel. Thankfully, I had my wallet and cell phone, and I could easily buy a charger. I decided not to go back home for a while and ignore both of them. But one day I was walking near the house and ran into a woman in her 50s living across from our apartment.
Was getting worried. Haven't seen you around. Also heard from your mom that you and your husband are going on vacation for a week or so.
Hearing that, I couldn't help but let out a dry laugh. But then I thought, if not now, when? I immediately contacted a moving company and asked them to help me move out as soon as possible, even if it was a bit more expensive. Luckily, I didn't have much stuff, and the movers arranged to send everything to my parents' house in just 3 days. Let's see how my clueless husband and his mother, who have no idea how much I've contributed to our home, react. They belittle me without knowing anything and I won't forgive them, I muttered as I faced our empty house, and then I went back to my parents' home. A few days later, my husband called me.
Hey, Bella, where are you? Your room is empty.
My husband, catching wind of the situation, kept demanding to know where I was. None of your business, I told him. By the way, I've already filed out the divorce papers since you've threatened divorce before. Just sign and submit them. I hung up the phone and blocked his number. And so, a peaceful life began. I woke up, did yoga, prepared breakfast and sat down at the table with my parents. Lunch with mom and dinner as a family again. I felt so normal, yet it was a comfort and happiness I hadn't felt in a long time. My parents were surprised when they received my things but welcomed me warmly. Things took a turn when my husband found out I was at my parents' and waited for me nearby. I tried to run when I saw him, but he caught up and grabbed my arm.
Bella, let's go home. The house is a mess without you.
His grip tightened, and I yelled,
Help me!
A high school boy in his sports uniform happened to be passing by and came to my aid, and a nearby businessman called the police. With the police there, my husband retreated quietly. But as expected, my raging mother-in-law stormed into my parents' house.
How dare you humiliate my son in public? What a disgrace you and your family are!
Finally, I held my father back from confronting them and said. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law was outside our place, screaming threats and even mentioning defamation lawsuits. My dad was about to lose it and confront her, but I held him back. It's okay, I'm ready to settle this. I called my husband, who noticed the incoming call while next to mother-in-law and boldly said, I know you're cheating, and I have evidence. I'm going to sue you for abuse and get a settlement when we divorce. Hearing this, my husband began to panic. In truth, I had hired a detective to gather evidence after hearing rumors about him going to a hotel with a co-worker. So I had ample evidence of his infidelity. I had even visited a hospital and secured a medical certificate just in case they tried something. I had also recorded conversations to have evidence if needed. I planned to confront my husband and his mother once I felt emotionally ready. But I won't be quiet when they insult my parents. I know my mother-in-law has been taking money from my wallet. Also, ever since I left, I heard the house is in horrible state, even smelling bad. You're getting complaints from the neighbors, aren't you? Hearing this, my husband was at a loss for words. I got this information from a neighbor who told me my husband and his mother were out of town. Apparently, they've been failing at basic chores like sorting the trash, and the house has turned into a dump. Also, I heard there are complaints with the property management about the loud arguments they have daily. So maybe now my husband realizes how much I contributed to our household and wants me to come back. But it's too late. I'm not coming back. Live happily ever after with your beloved mom. After saying this, I hung up the phone. Shortly after, my mom-in-law tried to kick down my front door. I called the police and they were both arrested. I later learned from my neighbor that they hadn't addressed any of the complaints through the management company. Eventually, the drama got so bad that it emptied out the entire apartment complex. The management finally took legal action against both of them, ignoring complaints, not paying rent, and disrupting business. They faced a lawsuit seeking damages. In the end, they were ordered by the court to vacate and pay damages. Now, they're blacklisted in the real estate market, unable to rent anywhere. Turns out, the reason for the unpaid rent was my husband making a costly mistake at work, leading to a pay cut. Unable to find another place in the area, he quit his job and moved far away. And yet again, he hit another roadblock in finding new employment. He ended up homeless, which led his mother to shoplift. She was arrested for injuring a store clerk who confronted her. I found out about this through online news. Beyond that, I don't know and don't want to know. After the divorce, I started working in my dream cafe. I met and became friends with a colleague who is 5 years younger than me. At 34, I remarried. By 40, we opened our own dream cafe, and now I'm pregnant. It's a late life pregnancy, but I've never been happier.
I wonder when he started to look down on me. Before we got married, he was so kind and respected my opinions. Incompetent. Idiot. Moron. Day after day, he hurled these cruel words at me, constantly asserting his own superiority. One day, I couldn't stand it any longer and talked back. He got mad and stormed out. At that moment, I realized something. I should have done this from the beginning. My name is Elsa, and I'm 28 years old. Just an ordinary office worker at a certain company. I met my husband, Nathan, through a friend, and we got married after dating for 2 years. From the beginning, he was very smart and always made me feel happy. Elsa, here. Is this from my favorite brand? It's been a year since we started dating, right? I wanted to give you something memorable. This is so expensive. I'm sorry. You went to so much trouble. Don't worry about it. I bought it because I wanted to give it to you, Elsa. He was unusually thoughtful for a man, always noticing even the smallest changes in me. In retrospect, he might just have been used to dealing with women. But for me, who had little dating experience, he was very attractive. Fair and kind to everyone, good at conversation. Friendly, well liked by everyone. However, that was just his public persona. A year after our marriage, the kind man he once was is gone. He seems to keep up appearances, but when he comes home, he becomes a domineering jerk. We both work, but I always do the housework. If I come home late because of overtime, or serve frozen food, he immediately scolds me. Hey, why is dinner frozen food? Sorry, I had to work late today, so I didn't have time to cook. Don't make excuses. You're such a failure. You can't even make a proper dinner. There's no point in saying that. I'm working too, you know? If you're to complain so much, maybe you can cook sometimes. Huh? What are you talking about? I'm the one allowing you to work. Be grateful to me, you loser. Now, hurry up and cook something. Apparently, in his mind, I'm just selfishly choosing to work. All I want is to keep working until we have kids. He doesn't think at all about sharing the housework because we both work. He's always insulting people, but if something good happens to him at work, he can't stop bragging about it. Just the other day, he came home in high spirits and started talking right away. Today at work, my colleagues relied on me. Man, it's tough having my own work and still being busy. I see. Good job. Everyone at the company recognizes my abilities, so people naturally come to me. Nathan, you're amazing. Right? I'm on a different level than a loser like you. You're lucky. Be grateful that you got to marry someone as capable as me. Despite our income not being that different, he talks as if he's the only one who's superior. To be honest, his attitude often makes me angry. Usually, I manage to endure it, but sometimes I can't help but talk back. However, no matter how much I express my own opinion, he never changes his mind and just fights back with his usual sophistry. Lately, even arguing has become a drag. I've always enjoyed keeping a diary. When we first started dating, it was filled with happy stories, but recently it has become nothing more than a record of the verbal abuse and harsh words from Nathan. One day, an unforgivable event had occurred. I had planned a meal out a month in advance to celebrate my best friend, Sally's birthday. I had told Nathan about this, and he had agreed to it. Despite that, on the day itself, he sprouted the most absurd statement. Hey, we're going to my parents' house today. What? I couldn't believe my ears. We can't today. I've told you I'm having dinner with Sally for her birthday. I must have forgotten about that trivial matter. Anyway, start getting ready to go to my parents' house. But I told you. I can't go. I have a promise with Sally. If it's that important, Nathan, you should go alone. Huh. If I did that, our parents would get the wrong impression. They might think our marriage isn't going well and start prying into my life. True to his reputation as a man of appearances, he only thinks about himself. With a heavy sigh, Nathan began yelling, his face turning red in anger. I told you to get ready quickly. You're a hopeless fool, and I bet your friend isn't any better. Excuse me? What did you just say? There's no need to celebrate such a person's birthday. It's a waste of money and time. Wait a minute, Sally is my precious friend. Take back what you said. I just stated a fact. Got a problem with that? Of course I do. I won't let you get away with insulting my close friend. I will never forgive you until you take back what you said and apologize. Nathan, however, smirked provocatively and snorted. Won't forgive until I apologize? Do whatever you want. I don't need your forgiveness. What's with that attitude? Do you even realize how horribly you're behaving? You just insulted my dear friend. Man, what a hassle. Enough. I'm out of here. While I'm gone, you better reflect on your actions. Think hard with that useless head of yours about how to behave towards me in the future. He stormed out, leaving behind only the bare essentials. The faint love I had left for him completely vanished at that moment. I couldn't forgive him anymore. Not just me, but to insult my dear friend too. Without chasing after him, I headed to the rendezvous point with Sally. Several hours later, after having a fun meal and a shopping spree with Sally, I returned home at night. Nathan wasn't home yet, but that didn't matter to me. I had completely lost any feelings for him. He didn't return, and I enjoyed living alone for several days. During that time, I had a realization. Wait a minute. Isn't life much more comfortable without him? Even when I managed household chores in between work, he wouldn't even utter a word of thanks, let alone praise. On top of that, he would constantly belittle me. Continuing such a marital relationship would be a complete waste of time and money. In my valuable life, Nathan's existence is nothing but a hindrance. Why had I even tried to understand and make efforts for such a husband? All my patience up until now suddenly seemed foolish. If I continued this marriage, it would only chip away at my mental health. It's smarter to get a divorce as soon as possible. Thus, I decided to divorce. When I told my best friend Sally about this, she listened to my story with sympathy. That's what happened. I just assumed you were living a happy married life. He's always desperate to keep up appearances. It's terrible at home. As she said this with a far-off look in her eyes, Sally murmured, I see. So, what's the plan now? I'm thinking about getting a divorce. I see. If that's your decision, Elsa, I think it's for the best. Can I refer you to a top-notch lawyer? That would help. I'm a secretary at a law firm. I know many competent divorce lawyers. Thank you. I can finally break free from that man. I'll start a new life. Following that, I consulted with the lawyer Sally introduced to me, and started making steady preparations for the divorce. Nathan returned exactly a week after he left. Seeing me, he grinned and spoke. Hey Elsa, long time no see. How was it? Being alone must have made you realize a few things, right? Yes, I did realize a few things. At my reply, he nodded in satisfaction. Good to hear. You must have understood my value in this week. I hope you reflected properly. Reflected? What should I reflect on? Huh? You really are dumb. Even though I gave you plenty of time to think, you haven't changed a bit. I have. I've changed indeed. He looked puzzled at my strong declaration. What's changed? What on earth are you talking about? My feelings have changed. Huh? I don't see any change in you. First, could you sign this for me? What's this? It's a divorce application. Can't you see? A divorce application. As soon as he saw the divorce application I presented, he exploded. Damn it! Are you out of your mind? You should be grateful for me while I was gone. Don't talk nonsense. It was rather comfortable being alone. That's why I'm asking for a divorce. Fooling around. How dare you decide that on your own? Why do you think I left for a week? To make you reflect on your actions and give you time to think. Well, I appreciate that. Thanks to you giving me time, I've realized. It's more comfortable without you, and I don't need a man like you at all. What? Nathan was probably shocked to hear that I decided to divorce him while he was gone. His mouth opened and closed as he tried to squeeze out words. You're joking. I gave you time to think out of goodwill, and now you're talking about a divorce. I won't accept such selfish behavior. It doesn't matter if you don't accept it. I'm not canceling the divorce. Plus, I'll get compensation at the divorce trial for the mental suffering you've caused me. Compensation in the divorce trial. Why should I pay? I've always told the truth. Do you think your oppressive remarks will be accepted? Even if it's the truth, it doesn't mean you can say anything just because we're married. Shut up. I've been listening to you all high and mighty. I won't pay a dime in divorce compensation, you hear me? Do as you please. Just remember, I'll have a lawyer on my side. Prepare yourself for that. Nathan started to shake, his face reddening like a volcano on the brink of eruption. He couldn't accept that the woman he had belittled for so long was now pushing him into a corner. Before long, he began to yell, spittle flying from his mouth. Enough of this! You should just listen to me. Who put these ridiculous ideas in your head? That good-for-nothing friend of yours? No. All decisions were made by me alone. Well then, you must be incredibly stupid. If you divorce me, you're just losing a capable husband. You're only setting yourself up for loss. It's quite something for you to say that. You're the only one who thinks you're capable. Why can't you see that? What did you say? All I need is for you to properly pay the divorce compensation. Can you sign the divorce papers quickly? Don't mess with me. There's no evidence that I've caused you mental distress. There is evidence. What? I showed him the numerous diary entries I had recorded on my phone. In it were detailed accounts of the daily verbal abuse I had endured. Looking intently at the smartphone screen, I told him clearly, you know, keeping a detailed diary like this can be used as evidence. I was surprised to find out myself. You've been recording this all along. It was a daily habit. I've always liked keeping a diary. But who knew it would come in handy like this? It was worth being diligent all this time. Don't mess around. I won't let you do as you please. He stormed into my room, no doubt looking for the diary to destroy the evidence. As I watched him frantically search for my diary, I spoke with a relaxed smile. Sorry to disappoint you while you're searching so diligently, but it's useless. I've already handed over the diary to my lawyer. What the hell? Of course I wouldn't leave evidence around here. I've been preparing for the divorce for a while now, when you weren't around. Shut up. I'll never admit to a divorce. I won't approve it. Huh? I don't need your approval. Even without it, as long as I have enough evidence, I can divorce. Nathan seemed to want to retort, but perhaps he realized it was futile and clenched his teeth in anger. He didn't seem to think he had done anything wrong. I was truly dumbfounded by him. You really are a joke right now. What's that? Do you even understand why it's come to this? It's because you're a despicable person who can verbally abuse others without feeling any guilt. You probably thought if you acted nice until we got married, you'd have me in your grasp. Well, you're out of luck. I'm not stupid enough to dedicate my life to a lowlife like you. How dare you? Who do you think I am? You? I only see you as an overconfident piece of trash. What? A piece of trash? While you weren't around, I realized it's a waste of time to be in a marriage with trash like you. So I decided to quickly throw you out. I hope you struggle and suffer from now on. Fall down to the depths of hell. Never, ever involve yourself in my life again. I ignored my stunned husband and left the house. I never looked back. When I reported the divorce to Nathan's parents, they were furious with him. You idiot! Divorce is a disgrace to our family. That's right. We can't show our faces to the neighbors. What are you going to do about it? Indeed, they were the parents of this man. It seemed his parents also cared abnormally about what others thought. As for his father, he gave his son a stern scolding, followed by a beating. Ouch! Stop it, Dad! Shut up! You can't even protect your own family. But I didn't expect that woman to resist me. You're disowned. Don't come back to this house. No way! Reflect on your actions alone for a while. Nathan didn't seem to expect to be hit by his own father. He reportedly apologized profusely, crying pathetically. Despite his pleas, he was easily disowned from his family home. Afterward, my diary became solid evidence, and the divorce was finalized. I was also able to fully recover the compensation money from the divorce trial. Since I left, Nathan's life has been a mess. His meals consist of fast food or frozen food every day, and his suits are wrinkled. It's the natural consequence of dumping all the housework on me. The reason for our divorce gradually spread throughout the company, and his reputation at work plummeted. Now, it seems that the employees keep their distance from him, treating him like a hot potato. He was a man who used to brag about being relied on by his colleagues. He must be burning with regret inside. Honestly, it serves him right. On the other hand, after the divorce, I moved to a condo near the office, which made commuting easier. Being able to live without having to worry about his mood every day is the greatest joy. From now on, I plan to devote myself to work with renewed vigor. And someday, if I meet someone wonderful again, next time, I want to make a decision to ensure my happiness.